Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cole Woodman. I am the president and chairman of the VIB network. Looks like we've still got a few people logging on, getting their audio set up. So I will do a brief intro on the VIB network. We are a nonprofit organization. For those of you that are on this webinar, I assume that you are on the VIB directory. That being said, if you know that your company is not listed on the Veterans and Business Network directory, please go to our website, vibnetwork.org, and make sure that your business is signed up. Also, we do have an opportunity board, so if you're looking for contract opportunities or partnering opportunities, that would be a good place to check. Also, sign up for the VIB newsletter for the latest events and opportunities. I would believe that most of you heard about this webinar through our newsletter, but if you found us on social media or somewhere else, please make sure you're signed up for the newsletter so you can stay up to date with things like this, these free webinars. And finally, save the date for our national conference, October 28th and 29th in sunny San Diego. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Anthony Tomaselli. He is the Assistant Director of the New York State Division of Service Disabled Veterans Business Development, and he is going to tell us about New York State's Disabled Veteran Business Goal, all the ins and outs of the program. He's going to get into all the nitty-gritty details. I just want to throw a plug out there that we have people signed up from all across the country listening to this webinar today. If you live in a state that does not have a veteran business or disabled veteran business program, listen to what Anthony has to say today. We want to try and get these programs established across the country in every state. Things that kind of mimic or match the federal program would be great. Some states, such as New York, have set the bar very high at 6% of their contracting goals. So really great program that New York State has that Anthony's going to tell us about today. Please, if you have any questions, type them into the chat, and we will try and get those answered. We're going to hold the questions till the end unless they're particularly pertinent, or if they're answered in future slides, we'll go ahead and I might tell you in the chat just to wait a minute. Otherwise, we'll interject with Anthony and kind of get a discussion going. And other than that, I turn it over to you, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Cole. Again, welcome. Welcome to the webinar. I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to be speaking to a large group of potential SDVOBs. As you can see the title slide here, becoming a New York State certified SDVOB. That's because I'm going to try to pitch to you on applying for our New York State certification and give you a little guidance on how to do that. It's very important to us to grow the program. The law does not prohibit us from certifying businesses from other states besides New York. I know that's the issue in some states like California. New York, we are open to veteran-owned businesses, disabled veteran-owned businesses from other states. There's a couple details that I'll get into throughout the presentation. But I am hoping that this webinar will lead to some applications for certification with our program, because that's really the only way we're ever going to reach the goal is with more SDVOBs. So let's jump right in. This started in 2014 with the New York State Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Business Act. Okay, what is this all about? Well, the law basically sets that 6% goal that Cole mentioned in New York State procurement activity. The law set the 6% is specifically cited in the law. It's a hard goal, and it's a high goal. If anybody has any idea just how much money New York State spends on an annual basis, 6% is a very big number. So obviously we are going to need a lot of capable SDVOBs to reach that goal. Just to be clear, in New York we tend to use the term SDVOB just because that's the way it was written in our law. But SDVOB, SDVOSB, it's the same thing. Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Business, Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business. In our program in New York, we are really only looking at small businesses. So why do we do this? Obviously, New York State wants to thank men and women for their service to our country. This is a quote from our Governor Andrew Cuomo, who signed the legislation in 2014. basically coming right out and saying that this is just one more way. New York is really trying to lead the nation in thanking veterans for their service, and this is one of many programs that New York State is engaged in to try to thank our men and women who've served the country and have sacrificed and now carry these disabilities, both physical and mental, with them as they try to go on with their days. So, who qualifies for this program? You must be honorably discharged veterans. This also includes the New York State National Guard or any other National Guard or reserves. You must have a service-connected disability rating of 10% or greater. That's also part of the regulations for the program, is the 10% rating. I understand that it is possible to have a 0% disability rating. To qualify for this program, you need a 10% rating or greater. And that's for the 51% ownership. At least 51% of the business must be owned by one or more veterans with that 10% or greater service-connected disability. You've got to be certified through our office. New York State will not credit utilization with any businesses, veteran-owned businesses, that have not been certified by the New York State Division of Service-Disabled Veteran-Owned Businesses. So if you've been to the VA and you have the CVE certification, or if you have California certification, the New York State agencies, they're going to be happy to meet you, but before they can count their spending with you towards that 6% goal, you need to get certified through our office. This is the key as far as the out-of-state New York, out-of-state businesses, is you have to have a significant New York business presence. And I'll explain that a little bit. New York State wants to see that the businesses that apply for our certification are making a contribution to the New York State economy. And there are a lot of different ways you can do this, and I've seen a lot of creative ways to do this. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged by this New York State business presence requirement. You can buy some products and materials from New York State businesses. If you travel to New York State for business purposes, your travel expenses, any money that you spent in New York State while you were here conducting your business, we'll give consideration to that. If you hire any New Yorkers into your business, maybe you want to get a regional sales rep or something on board, renting space. There's a lot of things. Anybody that's interested in applying for our certification has concern about the New York State business presence requirement, I'd definitely be happy to talk to you one-on-one about that at a later date. What we mean by other qualifying criteria, we do want to check out your business and make sure that you are capable of performing. We do not want to put any businesses on the SDVOB directory in New York that cannot follow through and actually deliver on the things that they're contacted for. So that's really what that's all about. So where do you go? All the information related to our program is on our website, ogs.my.gov/veterans. Okay, it's actually a pretty nice website as far as government websites go. I definitely hope everybody here would check it out at some point, possibly after the webinar. So we've got a very diverse group of SDVOBs, I'm happy to say. The total major breakdown, obviously, most of the businesses are focused in the construction or professional services, but that's just one little slice of the pie. We've got all kinds of other businesses doing all kinds of other things, and obviously with New York State being such a large and diverse state, there's a lot of different types of opportunities for businesses in New York. Why should you become a New York State SDVOB? Our program is growing and is successful. So far, we've only been at this 4 years. The last quarter, July 2018 through September 2018, that would be quarter 2 of the 18-19 fiscal year. That's the last quarter that I have really good data for. We dispersed $18.5 million to SDVOBs, which is quite a bit of an increase from zero 4 years ago. We have nearly 100 New York State agencies and authorities who have to comply with this law. They've got to try to meet the 6% goal. This also seems to be, maybe some of you are familiar with this in your business already, that a lot of private sector businesses are starting to give consideration to SDVOB certifications. Off the top of my head, I can think of AT&T is including service-able veteran-owned business in their supplier diversity. Prudential Financial Services, they have an SDVOB requirement. So this the idea of thanking our veteran entrepreneurs for their service by including them in the Savara diversity programs is catching on. Here in New York, it's not just catching on in the private sector; it's catching on at the local government level. The New York State law, the program that I work for, is specifically for New York State agencies and authorities, those agencies and authorities that work under the direction of the governor and the executive branch of New York State government. However, local governments, 4 counties in particular and 1 town, I don't have that listed up here, have already passed legislation mirroring ours at the state level. So if you come to New York and you start looking to do business with New York, you don't just have potential customers with the state government. Now you've got a couple of counties, and knowing the way things typically work around here, more counties are going to come on board. I mean, I could even just look at this example. If you know anything about New York State geography, Nassau, Suffolk, and Westchester are all right near each other. Once Nassau passed their law, Suffolk County said, "Oh man, Nassau's got an STVOB goal. We need to get one." And then Westchester said the same thing, and so on. It's just going to hopefully keep spreading. I'm very excited to see this happening. It's great to see the program grow at all levels.
Anthony, one quick question that's come up.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about the 6%? There's a question on whether that is 6% of your businesses that are doing business or 6% of actual contract dollar revenue.
Okay, that's an excellent question. We consider the 6% to be 6% of an agency's total non-exempt, non-excluded budget. So essentially, you're going to take every individual New York State agency or authority that has to comply with this legislation, whether it's the Department of Health or the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, whoever. They've got to try to get to 6% of their non-exempt, non-excluded spending. Exemptions are typically things like payroll, utilities, things like that. Those dollars, big, gigantic pieces of an agency's budget, they get cut out right away because obviously, you can't really do STVOB spending with your payroll. Exclusions is where it gets a little tricky. There are different types of procurements in New York. We have stuff called preferred sources, which is for the disabled and the blind. We also have single and sole source procurements where there are particular businesses that they've already got longstanding contracts with that they need to, continue to purchase services from or things like that. And then there's also the term zero goal contract. Zero goal contract is any contract where there's been a review of the directory of STVOBs and it's been determined that there are no businesses in the directory that are capable of participating on that contract in any way. Then they can exclude that contract from the total dollar amount. So obviously, as we certify more businesses and our directory grows, the number of contracts that could likely be excluded for such a reason is going to get smaller. So essentially, we're looking at a 6% of a very, very big pie. We need a lot more certified business to get there. But that's how we treat the goal. We treat it as it's an agency goal. It's agency's total non-exempt, non-excluded budget. We work with them on individual contracts that potentially, if there's one contract that's not really a good fit, so they might want to set a smaller goal on that. But there's another great fit, and they can set a higher goal than 6%. But we're looking that they're going to reach 6% of the total by the end of the fiscal year. So I'm going to move into the application process because, again, it's very important. As I mentioned, I do see the question that popped up about Maryland STVOBs bidding for opportunities in New York. In New York State, you have to get certified with our office. We do have the particular requirements that make our certification a little different from some of the other certifications. We have that New York State business presence requirement. We also have the 10% requirement. That tends to be a hang-up with a lot of the STVOBs who are certified with the CVE because they'll give you STVOSB certification if you have a 0% disability. However, New York State requires a 10% rating. So while you would qualify for the VA CVE certification, you would not automatically meet the New York State requirements. So let me move into the application process. We move very quickly with our applications because we consider it to be the most important part of our operation. We're never going to get to the 6% goal without a very large group of businesses. we're never going to have a very large group of businesses if we can't get you through the application process quickly. So our average turnaround on an application is 36 working days from the date that we receive an application to a decision on the certification. And this is not to say that we are not doing our due diligence in reviewing the applications. Our executive director has actually personally visited over 70% of the applications. And for those out-of-state friends, we may have a telephone call or some type of meeting to just get an idea, get to know you, explain what our vision for the program is, and make sure that you are the real deal, and that we've all kind of been made aware of the fact that in this program and other types of supplier diversity programs, there's quite a bit of fraud taking place, and we are doing everything we can to maintain the integrity of the New York State program. Our staff here is 3/4 of us are veterans ourselves, so it's something that we're all passionate about. We want to help. We want to help veteran entrepreneurs succeed. And so that motivates us to work quickly. This is not just another task that's been handed to another state agency. We've been created specifically to administrate this program, and every one of us who works here is personally invested in its success. When in doubt, like you can see the last bullet there, submit the application, and we will work with you to get you through whatever you need to get through. So how do you do it? You got to find our application. It's on the website that I mentioned before, ogs.my.gov/veterans. You can see there's a tab there, Get Certified, follow the steps. We are not very sophisticated. We are still using a paper application that you will print out and sign and send in to us with your supporting documentation. We do have FAQs available on the right there on the website. See, there's an orange tab on the screen, Certification FAQs. We try to answer as many questions as we can ahead of time, but we'll take calls and work with you however we can to answer your questions. Here's a picture of the beginning of the application. Just so you can see, this is a very simple form. We actually came up with it ourselves, looking at the requirements of the law and the regulations, and thinking realistically about what information can business owners realistically provide to us. What do we need to know? We don't want to ask for any information that we don't need to know. So the application is pretty straightforward. It's a couple pages long. Probably the most important page is page 8 of the application, which is supporting documentation. And again, this is just a capture of the top of the page, but it tells you the different types of supporting documentation that you would need to provide based on the type of business you are. So if you're a sole proprietorship, you would be asked to provide different documents than as if you were an LLC or a corporation. And again, all this stuff is specifically identified right there on page 8 of the application. And of course, if you have any questions, you can give us a call. One of the big problems that we have, one of the number one delays, what has us at 36 working days instead of even quicker, is that the regulations require that our documentation of the disability rating be dated within 1 calendar year of the application for SDVOB certification. So a lot of veterans will send their SDVOB applications in with a letter from the VA that's dated like 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years ago. We need something that's dated within 1 year. Now, if anybody on this webinar is not familiar, the VA has a website, eBenefits, that can get you any of the letters that you need documenting your VA disability rating, or it's also a great site for handling a number of other services related to your VA benefits. So this is a very easy thing. When we get these applications and the letter is not dated correctly, we can take them to the eBenefits site and actually walk them through getting that letter it'll have today's date on it. You can print it right out with today's date on it, and it'll take you about 5 minutes. So, this is just a walkthrough of that same process. I don't really need to get into the weeds on that. I will tell you that we, if I haven't dropped enough hints about it, we have a supply problem here in New York State. The goal, the 6% goal that we set, it's a very high goal. And I don't know how true this story is, but the the backstory of why our legislation got passed with 6% is that supposedly when the legislation was originally submitted to Governor Cuomo for his signature, it had a 3% goal on it in the legislation, and Governor Cuomo asked why 3%? Where did that number come from? And they said, well, that's what everybody else does. That's what the federal government does, because I believe the federal government's goal is 3%. So Governor Cuomo said, well, let's make it 6% because New York is twice as good as everyone else. So here we are with a very, very high 6% SDVOB goal that we need the businesses to get there. So we've identified a couple common issues that are a factor in the supply problem. Is that you've got a lot of veteran-owned businesses that don't know about us, which is why it's great that the Veteran and Business Network has invited us to do a webinar and reach out to their network. Because a lot of people don't know that New York State is trying this hard to support veteran entrepreneurs. So we need to get this out there so people know to apply. There's also a lot of SDVOBs walking around out there who could very easily qualify for a service-connected disability of 10% or more, but they haven't applied. They haven't filed a claim. That's a whole other issue that I could get into is, and I'm sure anybody else who's worked with disabled veterans knows, some guys have really funny feelings about applying for a disability claim. That's something else I'd be happy to talk to anybody about on a one-on-one basis on whether or not it's something you really should consider. One other issue is there doesn't seem to be any directory of New York State veteran-owned businesses or even service-disabled veteran-owned businesses out there. So we're kind of creating that as we go. And so we kind of need to reach out. We need to get more people. We need to do more webinars like this. And hopefully, I'm very, very hopeful that all of you who are listening to this webinar right now will tell your friends about us, tell your family members about us, tell your old battle buddies or your shipmates that New York State really is trying hard to do business with service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. And then we'll get more applications and it'll be easier for us to meet this crazy 6% goal. So again, I have a habit of getting ahead of my slides, so forgive me for that, but that's essentially what I'm talking about right here, is that we just need to reach more people. And word of mouth really has been our best help so far. We just certified a couple more businesses today, 7 more actually. We certified 7 more businesses as of this morning, which brings our total to 604 certified SDVOBs, which is a pretty big number compared to 2014 when we had 0 certified SDVOBs. So again, 600 SDVOBs, we're really proud of that, but that's not enough businesses to really make an honest run at 6% of New York State's contracts. We need more. We need more businesses. I'll tell you a little bit about contracting opportunities here in New York State and how our certification will hopefully connect you to those contracting opportunities. Once you get certified by us, you're going to be listed in our directory, which is on our website. It's actually a pretty decent directory as far as government-created directories go. It's pretty straightforward to use. And like I said, there are almost 100 New York State agencies and authorities who are now required by law to look in this directory for SDVOBs whenever they put a new contract or a new procurement together. There's also something called the New York State Contract Reporter. That's New York State's website for posting all contract opportunities. By law in New York State, any contract over $50,000 must be posted on the Contract Reporter. So that website is, you could just Google that, New York State Contract Reporter, and it'll bring you to that if you're interested in looking at New York State contract opportunities. But there's also a business registry in the New York State Contract Reporter where you can have business listed right there too. And within that registry, there is an option for you to check that you are a New York State certified SDVOB. So, that helps. That is, if you're a prime contractor and you're looking at a contract and you're trying to decide whether or not you want to bid on it, and you see that it's got a 6% participation goal for SDVOBs listed, you could jump right over to the business registry in the Contract Reporter and choose to search by SDVOB certification and find SDVOBs to reach out to. Like I said, this SDVOB directory, both the registry and the contract reporter, and the directory on our website, they are being used by, I would say, thousands of New York State procurement professionals. There's 97 New York State agencies and authorities complying with this legislation, and the small ones may have a handful of contract managers, but some of the larger agencies, like the New York State Department of Transportation or the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, they have literally hundreds and hundreds of people working on procurements. And they are looking at this directory every day because by law they have to check and see if there are any SDVOBs that they can include in their procurements. This is a picture of our directory, so you can search by keyword or certification number or by name. That first field on the left is actually pretty much a catch-all, so it will search all the different fields in the database. So if you were going to type in a word like buffalo, you would find a business that sells buffaloes. You would find a business where the owner's name was Buffalo, or you would find a business that's located in the city of Buffalo. So it actually works pretty good for catching just about anything you want to put in there. We also have, you can search by category or search by the counties in which the SDVOBs are willing to work. And so far, we've got a lot of positive feedback. The SDVOB directory is very useful. Another useful tip with this SDVOB directory is you can actually, if you don't enter anything into any of those three fields and you just press search, you will get the results for the entire directory. You will get all 604 New York State certified SDVOBs. With that list of 604 SDVOBs, you can export it into Excel. And once you have an Excel export of the directory, you can do all kinds of fun stuff with that. I don't know how the rest of you feel about Microsoft Excel, but I don't think I'd have been able to make this program work without that program. It's an extremely useful program. You can sort by city, you can sort by region, you can do Control F and find all kinds of different words anywhere within the Excel spreadsheet. So I'm a big fan of that. I like that we have that capability. There's different types of procurements that are used to work with SDVOBs in New York State. Obviously, the top one, prime contracting, that would be, agencies looking to contract directly with SDVOBs. Discretionary spending, there are a couple different rules for discretionary spending within New York State. Essentially, discretionary spending is like quick and dirty procurements in New York State. Instead of going through a whole formal procurement process with a posting on the contract reporter and a question and answer period and addendums being posted, if your procurement is under the discretionary spending threshold, as a procurement professional in New York State, you can just basically get 3 quotes from 3 different businesses, choose the lowest one, document it, and move forward with your procurement. It's obviously a very popular way to try to buy things when you're a state agency. And we've passed an amendment to our state finance law here in New York that allows discretionary spending with service-disabled veteran-owned businesses up to $200,000, which is much higher than the typical discretionary spending threshold of $50,000. So that is another major incentive that drives these New York State purchasing professionals to look to do business with SDVOBs, because they can either, if they've got a $175,000 anticipated procurement, rather than go through the whole formal process, if they can conduct a discretionary spend by looking at SDVOBs. And this same requirement also spills over to minority and women-owned business programs. So you essentially be looking at, you're still competing with SDVOBs with minority and women-owned businesses, but it's still a much easier way to get through a procurement than actually conducting a whole formal procurement. OGS centralized contracts. That is the New York State equivalent of GSA contracts. If you're familiar with the GSA contracts, that's what this is. Anything that New York State is purchasing in large quantities over and over and over again from many different agencies, they go on a centralized contract. And we are now reviewing all the outgoing centralized contracts for SDVOB goals as well. So there's a lot of opportunity. If you can get yourself onto a OGS centralized contract, it's like the same thing as hopefully some of you have some experience with the GSA. There's tons of opportunity. Some of our more successful SDVOBs here in New York, they've been selling through the OGS industrial supply contract, audio-visual equipment accessories. There are IT centralized contracts that have been helpful to some of our IT firms. Some of our SDVOBs have actually gotten creative in trying to spot out upcoming centralized procurements and making the arrangements and setting up to the relationships ahead of time. One of our SDVOBs, we weren't even expecting this to happen, ended up developing a distribution agreement with Sherwin-Williams Paint for traffic paint, and they were able to win the New York State procurement to provide traffic paint. And Sherwin-Williams agreed to not just necessarily do 6% of their paint distribution through this SDVOB. They're actually selling all their paint to New York State through this guy, and he is doing phenomenal over that. And that was because he was looking at the calendar of centralized contracts and anticipating and getting ahead of the game. Subcontracting, that's probably the most common. People understand these types of programs to work. Is the state agency will put out a procurement with an SDVOB participation goal and tell the prime contractor, you figure it out, you go make it happen, go find some SDVOBs to sub with. Now, the last item here, set aside. Set aside means something very particular in New York. Our Service Able Veteran Owned Business Act actually allows New York State procurement professionals to set contracts aside or pieces of contracts aside for only SDVOBs to bid. So only SDVOBs can bid to be the prime contractor on a SDVOB set aside. And this is a phenomenal thing to have included in our procurement because it really allows you to allows the agencies to make a big leap towards getting to that 6% goal. Because if you guarantee that your prime contractor will be an SDVOB, you're not going to do 6% of the contract value to the SDVOB. You're going to get to count 100% of that particular contract value to your SDVOB utilization. And it also gives SDVOBs a chance to be a prime contractor, which some of these supplier diversity programs like ours are often criticized that many of the small businesses we're trying to help become essentially professional subcontractors. And that's something that we're trying to overcome. You know, we want to, obviously you want to build and get the experience and the past performance working as a subcontractor, but ultimately the goal of this program is to develop businesses, help business grow. It's not necessarily about reaching the 6%, as it is about helping service-able veteran entrepreneurs be successful so that they can then be successful and share that success with their fellow veterans. If they can grow and add more staff and hire more people, we hope and expect that they'll hire more veterans. And by doing this, you know, we're helping the whole veteran community, not just the veteran entrepreneurs. So set-asides, we're very lucky to have that in New York State. You know, just some basics about getting work with New York State. It's the same as anywhere else. We really need our certified businesses to project credibility. You have to be, if you want to be in this arena and compete for opportunities with state governments or any government for that matter, you've got to have a website. It's 2019. People need to find you on the web. They need to be able to see what you're all about. And your contact information has to be good. I cannot tell you how many times that we get complaints about businesses not answering the phone. That's unacceptable. You have to be available and willing to go and chase the work. And attitude. Yes, we have a goal here in New York State, but we don't want people approaching New York State procurement professionals saying, hey, you have a 6% goal. You have to do business with me. That's not necessarily how it works. They can find another SDVOB to do business with. It doesn't necessarily have to be you. So obviously, just like in any other setting, you know, if you want to be a businessman, you've got to make your customers happy. You've got to market yourself. You've got to look professional. You've got to look desirable. You've got to make people want to work with you. Here in New York, we focus a lot on the NAICS codes. That seems to be the most common way, at least within our government agencies, that procurement professionals are looking to see what businesses do. So you definitely want to take your time and do your homework and make sure that if when you submit your application to us here in New York State, you're going to list out the NAICS codes you want in the directory. Make sure you don't miss anything. Don't just take the obvious ones. Look and see, well, what exactly do I do? We'll work with you. We'll want to, talk to you about the documentation and evidence that would go with identifying yourself with those NAICS codes. But you definitely don't want to miss anything. Another thing that I would advise everybody to be wise about is be reasonable and honest about your geographic reach. This is an issue more towards people I'm talking to within the state of New York, but it can kind of go anywhere. If you're going to have to include travel and lodging in your bid package, it's probably going to make your price uncompetitive with the other bidders. And if you're in one part of the state or one part of the country and you're competing with work for work in a location where there are people in the location who provide that service, you got to think about whether or not you can really compete with them. And this is an issue that comes up all the time. We ask SDVOBs to list in the application, what counties in New York are you willing to work in? And I want you to answer that question honestly. Where are you really willing to work? I mean, New York State is a bigger state than people imagine. We're not as big as California, but we're pretty big. And you could drive, from New York City. Everybody thinks all of New York State is New York City. From New York State, you could theoretically drive 5 hours north before you get to Canada, and 6 hours west before you end up in Pennsylvania. So you got to think to yourself, would I be willing to go all the way there until we call that the North Country, the very north part of New York? You're up in the Adirondack Mountains. There's not very much around out there. Are you going to say you're going to be willing to work in one of those North Country counties? Are you really going to go there? Think about it before you say you will. Capability statements. As a small business owner or any type of business owner, you do need to be able to have some type of document or item that you can hand people when you meet them that shows what you're all about. I can't stress this enough. I don't really like to see businesses showing up at networking events or anything else and they don't even have a business card to leave somebody with. You have to be able to, you have to have marketing materials. You have to have a good, strong capability statement. That's the resume for your business. You need these things to be successful. We want you to research and look and see what New York is doing. New York's pretty good about open data related to our procurement. We have a website called Open Book NY that you can go to and look at and see what New York State agencies and authorities are spending their money on and who the contractors are that's getting that money. Events in New York are critical. Meeting the buyers from the different agencies and authorities. There are a number of good events. We've actually partnered up with a nonprofit that was founded by one of our New York State SDVOBs to do a big event in November of each year. It's called VetCon, Veterans and Economic Transitions Conference. I can't speak enough to how proud I am of that event. If any of you are not doing anything in November, I believe it's going to be the week before Thanksgiving. You can mark your calendars for that. We ended up getting attendance from something like 65% of all the New York State agencies and authorities. We had a number of very, very large prime contractors attend that event. Total attendance for the event was over 600 people, all looking to connect. SDVOBs looking for business opportunities, state agencies looking to find SDVOBs, private businesses, looking to meet with those SDVOBs. I mean, I'm sure you have whatever state or part of the country you're in listening to this webinar. I'm sure if you haven't been to any matchmaking or networking events, you should probably think about it. There's nothing that replaces face-to-face contact with your buyers. Staying up to date with opportunities. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the New York State Contract Reporter posts opportunities here in New York State. You can always see what's coming out, what New York State agencies and authorities are buying, and maintain relationships, maintain events. Like I said, I can't stress enough job performance, reputation, who you are, attention to detail in your paperwork. I mean, all the things that you've probably been hearing over and over and again from other people who work in this types of business. It all applies here in New York State. There are a lot of people who are looking skeptically at our 6% goal, thinking like, seriously, how can you seriously set a goal so high for such a small population of businesses? So we've got to prove ourselves. We've got to prove that we can earn it. The veteran community, the veteran entrepreneur community, all of you that we're welcoming to come to us and come get our New York State certification. You got to join us. You got to help us prove to any doubters that this is something that can really be done successfully. That veterans are a special and unique group of people, that they can perform and deliver like nobody else. And eventually we want people working with our certified businesses, working with veteran entrepreneurs, not because they have to, because there's some legal requirement or some percentage goal being set, but because they want to, because they're the best. They're the best available. These are the most highly trained, disciplined, focused entrepreneurs that you're going to find. I just can't stress enough how the admiration and respect that I have for the successful veteran entrepreneurs that I work with. And I'm very, very optimistic that this webinar is going to lead me to meet some new ones. So I'm excited about that. We understand the key to long-term success is everybody working together. We do a lot here in New York to try to promote the building of this veteran entrepreneur network. Getting the service-able veteran-owned businesses to communicate with each other, communicate with us, communicate with the New York State procurement professionals. We got to talk to each other. We got to know what we're capable of, know what's available, and make sure that we don't miss anything. We need the businesses out there doing research, building relationships, helping us find the opportunities. We need the agencies to be looking at what they've got coming up and looking at our directory and finding businesses that they think can fit their needs. And our office tries to be in the middle of that and coordinate it. Like I mentioned the VetCon event earlier, I'm very proud of that, but I'm also very proud to say that there's been a couple of new chambers and veteran business associations kind of popping up in New York. Maybe this is something the Veteran in Business Network wants to kind of try to connect with some of these groups here in New York and just expand this network. I think that's kind of what the Veterans in Business Network is really all about, the idea that you can all be so much stronger by staying connected with one another. We're our best allies, veterans, and that's why we want to see this program be successful, why we think that supporting veteran entrepreneurs is probably one of the best ways to see more veterans get hired, because nobody looks out for a vet more than another vet. So we're going to try to do everything we can to support and encourage that type of behavior. We're here to help. If you ever see anything or you're looking at any opportunities here in New York and you got questions about us, let us know. If you know of any other opportunities or any other groups or organizations that may be interested in hearing what we have to offer, hearing about the New York State program, definitely let us know. I was very happy to be introduced to Rebecca and Cole and get the opportunity to speak to this particular group, because this is really the only way that I'm going to be able to build awareness of my program and get more applications and make that real go at that 6% goal, because it's really high. It's pretty far off. So anything that you can do to help us, if you know those vets, like I brought this up earlier, those vets who they're walking around with a limp or complaining about their back or have a hearing problem, but they don't want to go to the VA and file that disability claim. Put them in touch with us. Let me talk to them. I say over and over and over again, everything that we do as a government agency is about numbers. Like I said, the easier it is for us to get the contracts for the SDVOBs, the more businesses we have certified. That kind of goes when you think about that with veterans with disability ratings. More resources and attention is going to go to the disabled veteran community if there are more disabled veterans recognized and acknowledged by the VA as having service-connected disability. So you think to yourself, maybe you don't necessarily need that disability check, or you don't need that benefit, but by you getting your disability recognized and service connected, you're joining the ranks. You're standing shoulder to shoulder with those other vets who really do need the resources. And that number is growing, and the number of service disabled veterans that the VA is aware of, the bigger that number is, the easier they're going to have a time asking the federal government to let more money go to help more veterans with disabilities. So it's not just necessarily about you. And even with our program, if you're an entrepreneur, hey, maybe your business is doing okay without the New York State SDVOB certification, but maybe it could do a little bit better. And if your business could do a little bit better with that certification, maybe you could hire another vet. And maybe you giving that other vet a job would be the opportunity or the one thing that stops that vet from continuing down a path towards substance abuse and depression or suicide. So it's not just about you. It's about helping our whole community get recognized and get supported. So I can't stress how important that stuff is to me personally. My program, the Division of Service, that's what DSDVBD stands for, Division of Service Disabled Veterans Business Development. That's what we really feel like we're all about here in New York. You could reach out to us with any questions, anything. We're really excited about what we're doing, and we're really happy to be doing it. If you go to our website that I mentioned earlier, ogs.my.gov, we've got upcoming events posted on there. We have our directory of SDVOB, so you can see the kinds of businesses that we've already certified. The detailed eligibility requirements, I went through them previously in the presentation, but they're all right there on the page. There's links to our rules and regulations, links to the law. If you're the kind of person that just loves reading laws, we got a law you can read. Links to our guide to how New York State does business, and then also our annual reports, so you can see how far we've come. You know, it's been a pretty wild couple of years. Like I said, we had no law before 2014. The law was passed with a 6% goal. I can remember processing those first group of applications and certifying. We certified 21 businesses in December of 2014. That was the very first New York State directory of SDVOBs, 21 businesses. And we are now at 604, and the applications keep coming in. I'm hoping this webinar is going to lead to more applications, and I'm really hoping to one day be doing this webinar and talking about 1,000 New York State certified SDVOBs and tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars going to disabled veteran entrepreneurs. We're only going to get there with participation and enthusiasm from veterans like those of you who are listening to this webinar right now. So you can contact us with questions. Here's a screenshot of our website. At the very bottom is our contact information. Our email address, veteransdevelopment@ogs.my.gov. There's our telephone number. Someone always answers it, a real person. And here's a big, so you can see. That's us. That's our website, our email, telephone number. My boss, the executive director, Ken Williams, and that's me, Anthony Tomaselli. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity, for taking time to listen to me go on and on and on about the New York State SDVOB program. I hope that I'll see applications or get questions from many of you, and that we'll be working together in the future. Cole, do you want to jump back in and say anything? I'm happy to answer questions. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely, and I think I forgot to mention this to everybody at the beginning, but it was on his intro slide. Anthony is a veteran himself. As he mentioned, 75% of his staff are veterans themselves. They talk the language. They speak the military lingo, so to speak. So if you do have questions, by all means, reach out to their team. We've had positive feedback from other veteran businesses that we've spoken to about the New York program and their office and how helpful they can be. So we'll jump into the questions as we're getting a little slim on time here. One of the biggest questions that's come up, and it's come up from people that are interested in applying and also from people who have applied, that it sounds like they've gotten questions back, and that's to the requirement for the significant presence. So if you could talk about how you establish a significant presence, what type of things really go towards supporting that claim of having a significant presence, just any other info you have that can clarify that for our attendees today.
Absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, we're really looking to see that there was some type of contribution made to the New York State economy, that you're giving something back as well as you're benefiting from this program. At this point, I would say that all New York State presence is decided at the discretion of the executive director, my boss Ken, and we are, like I said, we're vets. We want to see this program grow. So we're looking for ways to try to help people meet the requirement, not looking for excuses not to certify people. Obviously, the most common way to make a New York State presence is to buy something from a New York State business, spend some money in New York. Whether it is if you're going to buy raw materials for your manufacturing process, or if you want to buy any type of materials that you need for a project or any type of work that you're doing, and you can get it from a New York business and show us the receipts. Give us a receipt that you actually purchased something from a New York State located business. That's a really easy one right there. Probably the most common one that we encourage for the out of state businesses is come to New York and start marketing your business here. You're going to spend money, you're going to invest money by trying to do business here in New York. You're going to travel here, you're going to stay in hotels, you're going to pay for cabs, taxis, train rides, things like that, meals at New York State restaurants while you're here looking to do your business. And I'm not just saying like, all right, you went to go see a Broadway show, I'm going to send the tickets to the SDVOB team in New York and they're going to certify me. No, it's got to be legitimately related to your business and your business activity. But we can be pretty flexible. I've actually had people successfully make a case that they were doing business with a New York State entity already and saving the state money, and they were able to prove that the business that they were doing was more competitive than what else was out there, and that they were saving this New York State agency money, and we were able to kind of swing that past the lawyers. We really, like I said, the executive director, the law gives him a lot of discretion to make these decisions. The requirement is there because we don't want to see people just coming, getting our certification, and taking the business from New York and leaving. We want to see you leave something behind. What I would consider to be the greatest accomplishment would be to see a hire a New Yorker to be part of your business. I mentioned earlier maybe a regional sales representative. If you ever needed to lease any space in New York or set up an office in New York, those were all easy ways to convince us. But not everybody has that kind of capital to invest in those things right away. So the obvious ones would be say look for things that you can purchase that would benefit your business, that you can purchase from New York State businesses, and also looking for those opportunities that if you're going to come here and you're going to market, come to that VetCon event that I mentioned in November. There's actually going to be an event, a New York State purchasing event, the end of April, the beginning of March. I believe it'll be April 30th to March 1st. It's called GovBuy, GovBuy 2019. That's going to be hosted right here in Albany. It's going to have purchasing people from all the New York State agencies and authorities come. Exhibit at the event. Pay money to have an exhibit at the event. And that's something that you might want to consider. And you add all those things together, and you're building up a case for your New York State presence.
And that's a good point that you made. Your team is looking to try and encourage participation, not discourage participation. For those businesses out there who have gone through the VA's CVE certification, sometimes it seems like they're throwing up obstacles that seem a little unnecessary from the small business perspective, but you guys are actually going the other way, in trying to encourage real certification, but also you guys have a little bit of leeway to work with businesses, like you mentioned, that may not have the initial capital to have an office in New York, but are marketing, are purchasing supplies, etc. And so for those of you out there who ask those questions, by all means, if that doesn't make it clear, feel free to contact Anthony and his team. It sounds like they are, trying to find ways to get you into the program, not keep you out. And so that's the key.
You didn't raise your hand and swear to serve the state of Oklahoma or the state of California or even just the state of New York. You served the country. You served the United States of America. that's the way our office feels. So we're going to try to do whatever we can to help you meet that requirement.
Yeah, and that's one of the things why we love the New York program at the VIB so much, is because it really does open the door for participation for all veteran businesses. Another question we have: how does your office and how does the program account for joint ventures? What are the requirements there? Does the program kind of encourage joint ventures? A lot of times small businesses can kind of help get startup money and experience by partnering with a larger company. So what is your take on the joint venture process?
We support it. We support anything that's going to help grow businesses. We're going to want to ask you a lot of questions. We're going to ask you to be extremely transparent with us about your joint venture, and we're probably going to we will require you, if we are going to certify a joint venture, or even once you get certified with us, if you want to engage in a joint venture with another business, what we would like to see in any type of mentoring protege agreement. We don't have a formal structure like a document on our website that will show you exactly what we want, but we're going to look for you to present and work with us to create a plan towards independence, with timelines and benchmarks and things like that, to show that this joint venture actually has the goal of building up the independence and the capability of the SDVOB. That it is not a situation where you just have one business take advantage of another business to benefit from their certification. So that's, we treat every joint venture on a case-by-case basis. We will want to sit down and talk to you and the other partners involved. And again, like I said, come up with a plan, and I'll have to give you a plan agreed upon by all sides of how the joint venture is going to work, and exactly how the joint venture is not just going to help both parties get work, but how that joint venture is going to help that SDVOB grow, and what kind of benchmarks we'd be looking to set to prove to us, to demonstrate to us that the joint venture is having that result, that it is helping the service-able veteran-owned business grow and increase their capability.
Perfect. Another question that has come up, you mentioned the difference in the naming between the New York program of SDVOB versus the, VA's SDVOSB. Can you talk about the missing of that S for the small business in the naming convention? Is there a revenue threshold where a disabled veteran business may not qualify, i.e. can large businesses still participate in the program, or how do those criteria change as you start to become a bigger business as a disabled veteran?
That's an excellent question. As it stands right now, according to the law and the regulations here in New York State, we require that the businesses that we certify, they must be small businesses according to the definition that they can have no more than 300 employees. There's no revenue requirement, but you can't have more than 300 employees. So that's the benchmark. That's the number that you got to keep in mind. If you've got fewer than 300 employees, you can qualify for our program. Now, if you're a staffing service or something like that, you're probably thinking, oh, does that apply to me? We do not count your placed staff as part of that 300, so don't worry about that.
Perfect. And again, that goes to how open and willing the New York State program really is to helping veteran businesses, removing those obstacles that other states kind of take into account. For those of you asking, the slides will be emailed to all the attendees today. We will also post this presentation. It will live on the VIB Network website. So if there's something you forgot, or an email address that you thought you wrote down but couldn't find later, or a website, you can go to our website, find the copy of this presentation. The slides will also be emailed out. I'm going to look through one last time and see if there are any other questions we may have missed. I think that we have covered everything, and we are right at our 1 hour mark. So I want to say thank you again to Anthony and his team. They have a great program there in New York State. This type of program is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Veterans want to do business. We want these type of programs, but the only way we continue to have these type of programs is if we make them succeed. So please, if you have any interest at all in possibly doing business with the state of New York, contact Anthony, contact their team. Please get signed up, get certified, go through the process, because if New York can show that they can meet a 6% requirement, then there's no other reason for other states to not say they can't do it. I mean, New York is a big state. They spend a lot of money. So if we can help them get to that goal, if we can help get their disabled veteran businesses participating in those contracts and hitting those numbers, we can help spread these type of programs all across the country, which, again, just goes back to what's good for one veteran business, probably good for another. Help us all together. We all succeed. So thanks again, Anthony. Any last words before we go?
No, just thank you so much, Cole. This has been a pleasure. I always enjoy doing these things and reaching out to more people. Thank you to Rebecca for connecting with us. Again, look forward to doing more. I would definitely be interested in hearing more about your conference in what you said that was in October. I am a big fan of San Diego, so definitely love to hear more about that.
Absolutely.
So
we look forward to helping New York State reach their 6% goal. So for all of our attendees, we appreciate you joining us today. We thank you, Anthony, and your team for putting in the time to help get the word out and for the work you do to help support veteran businesses. For everybody, our next VIB webinar will be on April 24th, Persuasive Presentations, How to Deliver Winning Oral Presentations in the Federal Government Proposal Process and Beyond. And so we thank you, everyone, for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us, contact Anthony, go to the website, and we look forward to networking with you in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.